Welcome to Prime Suspects, alongside Adam Bjorn and Prime Sports co-founder Joe Brennan Jr. I'm your host, Matt Landis. Adam, not the most exciting weekend from an entertainment perspective, looking at all things football, with every NFL Week 8 game but one being decided by double digits. How was college football Week 9 and NFL Week 8 for you from a betting and bookmaking perspective?
So there were 6 great days and one what the fuck happened day. Sunday was just we were green, all states, all everywhere. And then I woke up Monday morning and we were red. The late games we got caught on the parlays with those favorites winning. It was just Jets, go the Jets. Great one there. Play of the week, Miami got up there. 3 out of 4 my survivors still alive. I didn't mind taking the hit on Atlanta because I was going to use them in 2 or 3, but ended up just using them in 1 and wiped out, good half of that. So I think we're down to about 2,000 now. But yeah, it was looking like a great week, and then Sunday was just a day from hell kind of thing. So we'll fight through it. But as I said, more importantly, 3 out of 4 survivors got through. Atlanta, carnage, Jets, that was almost like the Broncos in reverse, the good way as well on that side of it. So, yeah, good weekend, and we'll fight to live another one.
Yeah, 75% of entries surviving the weekend is more than a lot can say, especially after the Falcons start Kirk Cousins as a bit of a late week surprise, proceeding to then get blown out by Miami. The Jets also a surprise starter under center with Justin Fields leading their comeback win at Cincinnati. Both of those results carrying significant Circa Survivor implications. And Adam, I was going to ask how you're faring all things Survivor, but you've given us that answer off the top. So I would like to pivot to this late news cycle quarterback carousel we kind of saw this past week. And for those who do still have entries in Survivor, how does that maybe reinforce any thought process when it comes to deadlines to get your submissions in and trying to make sure that you have as much complete and accurate information as possible prior to submitting?
Yeah, so, the deadline for my proxy is Friday evening. I know if I flip into Saturday morning, I can get it, sneak it through. But obviously, if you've got right up until, the cutoff time, which I think is 4 o'clock Pacific time on the Saturday, you need to be using all that time. So if you've got a proxy out there, maybe you need to flip them a little extra change just to make sure that they're on board to get you in as late as possible if you're still around. That was kind of the, looking at the Ravens while there's other opportunities to use them. There was too much conjecture there. Didn't see the Atlanta one coming. Got lucky there, as I said, picked 1, ended up putting 2 on the Patriots instead of putting them elsewhere. I only had 1 choice on the Colts. And then, Jets, I paid the Bengals last year. They got me multiple times. They literally wiped out my entire survivor last year. So thankfully for that, I wasn't touching them, and I've literally got them circled for week 18 against Cleveland at home if I've got nothing else to choose, and I won't be touching them beforehand. But, that was insane. A bit like the week before where I saw, 28-16 or whatever it was for the Giants Broncos, and then get that score Monday. I was out actually walking around post cruise on Sunday, saw the score, turned it off, walked into a bar and was like, Jesus Christ, what the hell? It's insane. It's almost like every team, NFL team, should be just playing the 2-minute drill the whole way through the game. Because it seems like it's the last 2-3 minutes. It's become an NBA. Don't bother watching it. Turn it on for the last, 2-3 minutes of the game and, sort of see what happens.
One game you briefly mentioned was the Baltimore-Chicago matchup, and I want to touch on that just a bit more because in a week devoid of compelling games on the field, one of the more interesting scenarios came out of Baltimore and an injury report violation surrounding Lamar Jackson's availability. We saw the Ravens go from about -7 on Friday night down to about -2 on Saturday morning for that home matchup against the Bears. Adam, how did that whole saga affect you on both sides of the counter?
Yeah, so when I did our Saturday night with Vegas Horse Pools, I looked at it, and most of our money was at that 6.5, 7, like both sides of the action. And there was a lot of sharp players that were also on that -6, -6.5. When I looked at the new number that was around 2.5, there wasn't a lot of volume at that point in time. By Sunday morning, there was a bit more involvement, but there wasn't a massive, like, the information come out and you saw it goes 7, 6.5, 6, 5.5, 4, any of that kind of thing. So I don't know if anyone got the information early. It doesn't seem like there was any leaks or anything of that nature, unlike the other sports that we're learning about. But yeah, it was fairly well balanced on both ends of the charts at the 6.5, 7, and then also around the 2.5, 3 come Sunday.
Joe, want to bring you into the fold as well. Yesterday was a rare sports equinox with all four major U.S. sports in action, capped off by an 18-inning classic at Dodger Stadium that didn't end until Tuesday across much of the country. With every major sport in action right now, what's capturing the most of your attention these days?
Well, first of all, with that game, when you got Blue Jays versus Dodgers, my money is on the asteroid that kills them all as a true Phillies fan. But I do think it's going to be interesting to see where things go. I mean, I imagine there's going to be a pretty ripe number to hit on Toronto coming at us because everybody's going to figure like, oh, Toronto, they're done. You can't lose an 18-inning game and go down 2-1 and expect to have much life in them. I think Toronto's a better team than that. When you look at the MVP race in that series, it's a two-horse race between Ohtani, who you could say he's in the lead right now because they're in the 2-1 lead, but Vlad is right there behind him. Nobody else is even close. It's going to take some sort of Runyon-esque performance in a deciding game to capture it over one of those two guys. And when you start looking, like right now, NHL, so many games, so early. Probably what is more interesting in the NBA isn't who's doing well. My 3-0 76ers. But maybe who's coming out a little slow here right now. Some of the early favorites, for season money, like Boston, Orlando, Indiana, the Mavericks, the Rockets, all coming out to like crap starts to the beginning of their season. So that may be about the only interesting thing there. The thing that I'm most interested in right now is college football and Big Ten football, even though there's way more teams than 10. Right now, you got the number 1 team in the country, Ohio State, and the number 2 team in the country, Indiana University, where my nephew is a freshman this year and must be having the time of his life thinking that he was going to a basketball school and wound up at a big-time football school. What's really interesting is you just look at, futures markets, like to win the Big Ten conference title. If you had Indiana, like currently it's sitting at OSU still minus 160. Indiana is shortened to plus 200. But Indiana opened across the board, most shops at somewhere between like plus 3,000, plus 4,000. So if you got in early, if you were a Hoosier believer early, you must be out of your mind right now. Because when you look at who they have to play, both teams are playing what I would say is probably some wounded softies here. OSU's got to play. Well, let's say first, Indiana's got to play Maryland, great lacrosse school and basketball school. Penn State, we all know what happened to them. Wisconsin, who's a huge disappointment this year. And then interstate rivals Purdue, who that's always an interesting game. You can always get up for that. I think maybe OSU's got the tougher row to hoe here, even though they are also playing Penn State and Purdue. But even though they're playing UCLA, who, ask James Franklin what giant killers they are, they're also playing Rutgers, good rowing school. But sitting there at the tail end of their regular season is Michigan. And oh my, if you're an OSU fan, you're just looking at that and like, that's going to be the one that bursts their bubble. So right now, looking at Indiana to maybe win the regular season conference title in the Big Ten, boy, that sounds interesting. All the power conferences are starting to tighten up. It's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. We're 2/3 of the way through the regular season. Those conference championships are going to obviously loom large when it comes to who's going to be making it into the college football playoffs. Only team that's not going to affect is Notre Dame, who at 5-2, a 2-loss Notre Dame school can still make it by the agreement into the college football playoffs. So right now, college football, probably the most exciting thing to both watch and also bet on for me.
Well, at this point, let's go ahead and get into the biggest news of the past week. And as anybody catching this discussion is almost certainly aware, last week, federal prosecutors arrested Portland head coach and former NBA star Chauncey Billups, Miami guard Terry Rozier, and former NBA player Damon Jones, among others, in connection with illegal gambling and fraud conspiracies, ranging from sports betting to high-stakes poker games with ties to organized crime. Joe, the media coverage of this story has really gone mainstream, and in many cases, you could say it's been sensationalized or perhaps distorted. What's your analysis of the coverage of this story to date, and where the narratives are, and maybe more so are not focusing in the right areas?
So people are just going to think I'm an apologist for the industry when I say this, but I think the numbers will eventually bear this out. This is 95% a mob poker story and 5% a sports story. The Terry Rozier stuff is old, and the Chauncey Billups stuff is new, but Chauncey is in there primarily because of the poker stuff, along with the other guy whose name I don't know, can't remember. And that's really what this goes down to. It's like 3 guys who were involved with the NBA, and then a bunch of guys. 4 of the 5 families out in New York. What was the 5th family doing when all this was going on? Probably betting on Kalshi or something like that. Now we've gotten into the phase of the reporting on the reporting, and everybody's got their, of course, silver bullets, simple fixes. Let's get rid of prop wagers. That'll just solve all of this. The most disgraceful thing in all of this, is the finger pointing at the sports books, who even the FBI director said during his incredibly sensational public press conference on this one the other day, said that the sports books were the victims, right? The sports books were also the ones who initially caught all of this betting, all the betting patterns. And with the assist of U.S. integrity, is starting to get this sorted out through law enforcement. But again, it's this blame the victim stuff that's going on here, because you're hearing time and time again that it's like, oh, well, those prop wagers, it's just too tempting to the players to engage in corruption or something like that. And to me, that is just absolutely terrible to sit there and say like, oh, well, sports books, you were just a little too sexy at the bar. You were practically asking for it. That level of blame the victim. We're being financially assaulted. We're being defrauded. We're the ones. It wasn't the FBI or the Department of Justice who found these guys. It was us. And here's the thing that I really want to point out. In scandals past, of course, it was always the sports books that found this, whether it was Arizona State, Boston College, other ones that we'll talk about. It was always the bookies that found the cheaters, right? When it came to law enforcement finding these guys, it was always part of a, organized crime task force bust, or as part of a drug bust or something like this. The amazing thing is that for the first time, and they talked about this in the press conference on Friday, the FBI and the DOJ have dedicated resources for illegal gambling. Isn't that amazing? And why does that happen? Because gambling, sports betting in America was legalized and is now being regulated. These guys, you can say like, oh, well, these prop wagers, it's just too easy. It's too much of a temptation. They didn't exist before. Yes, they did. Prop wagers didn't just come up out of the ground on May 2018. It existed beforehand. And here's the other thing, and you just can't get past this. It wasn't like Adam was sitting in his evil lab somewhere in Costa Rica or Jamaica coming up with this dastardly idea about, oh, wow, how can we come up with this incredible new market that, people will be willing to bet on, where people bet on the players instead of on the game. These have been around forever. I mean, let's think about how many years, how many decades really, Super Bowl props have been like the story around the Super Bowl. And people just wanted more of them. Is a props, is a sports data, is a stats culture. 30 plus years of the way people cover the games, okay? You turn on ESPN, Fox News, everybody like that. Everything is stats. All the chyrons has a player's stats, how many carries, how many passing yards, what a passing rating in, which somebody's still got to explain how a perfect passing rating is like 158.3. It doesn't sound like a really round, perfect number to me, but, maybe Jalen can explain it to me when he's done practice. But America's become a stats culture about players. It was further fed by fantasy sports. So this notion that somehow, beginning in May 2018, these evil, dastardly sports books concocted these things to both addict the public and needlessly tempt the players, known as proposition wagers, it's just absolutely false. But what has happened since then is we've got eyes all over this. We've got the states, we've got the sports books, we've got third parties by U.S. integrity. Now we've got the Justice Department. Now we've got the FBI. This is the system working. This is the system working. And let's stop it with the people who are clutching their pearls and wetting their pants in the national media saying, like, what we really need to do is we got to get rid of prop wagers. And you know who else I'm including in this? And this is probably not good for Prime, but let's put a warning sign on the front of this. I no longer work for Prime. Governor DeWine of Ohio trying to suggest this too. Because if the regulated market doesn't do this, who will? Who's going to fill the void? It's going to be the black market. It's going to be the unregulated market. And everybody says, like, oh, no, you guys always raise the unregulated market as the boogeyman every time somebody wants to stop you. Really? Right now, I want you to tell me how difficult it is for anybody here right now, anybody in Utah right now, to be able to place an unregulated prop wager in the United States on their phone. It's just as easy as placing a bet on FanDuel, DraftKings, Prime, BetCris, Arizona.
It's actually easier.
It probably is, because you don't have to go through KYC and AML
There you go.
and all that other stuff, right? So the way everybody has lost their mind, and instead of saying, like, good, we caught the cheaters, and let's make friggin' examples out of them that scare a generation of pro athletes and college athletes into, like, the worst thing in the world for them to ever think about would be to contemplate cheating on this kind of stuff. We're sitting here and we're blaming the victim, the sports books. What a surprise. I'm going to go take a breath right now.
Adam, a lot to unpack there. Let's take it any direction you'd like, and I'll tee you up by asking for your take on this story since it broke almost a week ago, and what you make of the different coverage you've seen thus far.
Again, to me, it was an absolutely nothing burger. It was just a lot of hoopla over nothing, really. They kind of nailed it. There was a poker story. And because you got the mob involved there, then you get the headline, and then you get these players that, are invited to these things. They're used as bait. They get into, situations where then, you're looking for information, and then becomes insider trading. Now, insider trading has existed for the 3 decades that I've been involved in sports betting, and this is just part of the business. So it's new markets, new worlds, Americans sort of blowing these things out of proportion. Maybe it's naive on my side thinking that this is much smaller than what it is, having lived and breathed it for so long. This is happening. This has happened. This has been around for a very, very long time. Used to be masseuses and trainers in the ATP and WTA locker rooms 20 years ago. That's where the information comes from. I think everything that's been done in American sports betting since the PASPA repeal has been heading in the right direction. All these little things that come out, yes, it's going to, they're going to happen. It's just part of human nature and greed and all those kind of things. The funniest thing of it all is, yes, all the leagues fought it and fought it and fought it and fought it. And now the leagues are more entrenched in it than anybody. They're partners with the data suppliers. They've got the sponsors all over their stadiums. They've got sportsbooks in the stadiums. There was a lot of soccer teams out there that actually in the UK until recently banned, or it might even be getting banned next year, where they had the brands on their shirts. Like, this is part and parcel of it. We've seen this in snooker. We've seen this in cricket. We've seen this in all the sports around the world for a very, very long time. Welcome to the party, America. But the good thing is you're catching this stuff. You're doing it the right way. You have some integrity things in places. You have the sports books cooperating. It's working as it should work when you regulate something and monitor it and you have all the data in the world. Again, this 5% might be generous of what this story is when it actually regards the NBA. It might be 2 or 3% on the overall arching of the whole story. And it's a couple of rogue players or even a coach that just happened to say, I'm going to rest my players this game. And then, they lose by 30 points. It happens. I think it's, the people in the biggest or toughest spot is the players themselves, because they have entourages, they have family members, they have all these different things that see them, a player get out of bed in the morning and he's, tweaked his ankle or something, and then they're on their app trying to get a bet down on, that he won't play. It's hard to police, it's hard to monitor. I think they're doing a great job right now. So let it be what it is. Congress popping their head up and wanting the BA to come on. Seriously now, just treat it for what it is, go through the processes, and we'll come out the other side. And I guarantee there's another one down the road coming. This isn't the end of it. There's more coming. So clutch your pearls, hang on to them tight, because this is the way it works. This is what happens when you regulate stuff and you have the data and you have all the information, is you find these things and you clean up the product in the sport and you protect the players, you protect the consumers, you protect everybody else involved. Because right now it's easier to bet this stuff in unregulated markets. There's no KYC and it's being done in America's own backyard. Forget about the offshore. It's being done onshore in 50 states. So let's treat it for what it is. Good headline, move on, get the process better, and, keep finding these things.
And right away, right now you got people saying like, well, all this stuff has started to pop up since we legalized sports betting. And there's just too much money in it. And this is all happening now. What about the children? It's like, it's the most, it's when I was a child, I thought as a child, but when I became a man, I put away childish things. The reason why all these things, we hear about all these things now is because somebody's policing it. The offshore, the street guys or anything like that, they were not reporting this stuff publicly when it was happening beforehand. Okay. And, that is the reason why, number one reason why we pushed for legalization. It wasn't money. It wasn't tax money. It was because you couldn't have a $500 billion underground economy that has a direct effect on what is essentially our civic religion, which is sports in America. And you just cannot have that operate and think that it can operate safely. You want to talk about what about the children? What about the romance of sport? What about the public's trust in that? The only way the public's going to trust sports is if people are aggressively policing this, not sticking their head in the sand and wishing this would all just go away. And can't we just go back to a time when it was for the love of the game? The love of the game probably ended somewhere in the mid 1800s when professional baseball started. Since then, you've got billionaire owners, multi-billion-dollar leagues, multi-billion-dollar media companies that are latched in on this, fans buying merchandise, buying tickets, all this stuff. Sports are just as much about the game, which I still believe in. I still believe in the romance of sports, but I can walk and chew gum and recognize that while sports is romantic and something that is a spectacular human endeavor, it's about money as well. And so sports books should not be the ones who are being pilloried in this. Everybody else should look in the mirror and say, what should we be doing? Leagues, what should you be doing about your employees in order to keep the game straight?
Very comprehensive comments from each of you. And I thought we might hit just about this point in the conversation while I was on a road trip with my wife this past weekend. And as I ran through it in my head, I kept butting up against the fact that everything I'm hearing from you guys and others who I respect in the space makes a lot of sense. Yet there still seems to be such a large gap to reconcile when it comes to the public perception in all of this. And for better or worse, it just seems like there is so little room for nuance when it comes to discourse that can shape the public perception. So maybe it's because, Joe, I've heard you refer to Adam as Maximus over our 100+ episodes doing this show. I think of that classic line from Gladiator, win the crowd. So if you guys are to try to harness all of this and to distill it down to phrasing that could fit on a bumper sticker, what would be your pitch to shape the public discourse in a better direction?
Boy, this seems like something you could have given us like a little bit of notice on, Matt, like to come up with a better response, because I think it deserves something that's a little more thoughtful, because this is the problem. I've talked to a couple of reporters since Friday and then some, and I keep getting the same thing. It's like, wow, you're really fired up about this. Why isn't everybody, why isn't FanDuel, why isn't DraftKings, why isn't anybody else defending sports betting on such fiery terms as you are? And the question what I say to them is like, I have no idea. I have really no idea, other than I think they just kind of want to, do what's often been the response, which is just like, just keep quiet, keep your head down, and wait for the public to move on to their next outrage. Okay, we're the outrage of the week, so to speak. We've kind of moved out of like cottage industry outrage to national outrage, haven't we now? But, a lot of this it's like, okay, well, who's the outrage being driven by? It's being driven by a lot of talking heads in the media who don't have a lot of sophistication or knowledge about this industry. They don't have a lot of knowledge about how these things work. And so Maine, if you had to ask me here, put me on the spot, like, what's the message that we should be conveying? It's like, yeah, we got these cheaters and we're going to get more if any of them step out of the line. I think we ought to lean into this a little bit. Okay. The people who want to, I think the worst thing in the world right now would be to be timid about this. We caught a bunch of sophisticated cheaters. All right. And we're going to punish the hell out of them. And we should embrace the fact that it is making the national media. Okay. But let's not be absent from the discussion about it. Let's not just sit there and hope it all blows over so everybody can go back to talking about, like, I don't know, Kalshi, right? And the Epstein papers or Epstein files. No, like, we should embrace this and we should use this, harness this in the moment to, as a form of defense. Like, players have to be absolutely terrified of ever contemplating doing this. Okay. And if we can focus that, like, let's try to focus, like, who actually transgressed here? It was the players. And short of being able to read players' minds, this is how we're going to be responding. This is the only way we can respond. We're white blood cells. We're finding disease, we're attacking it, and we're getting rid of it. Okay? We're not a force field. Maybe the leagues can be a force field since it's their employees and they have the most direct contact with these people. But the only thing we can do is root out corruption when we find it.
All right, I know I really put you on the spot. Joe, well done. We will go ahead and start to tie a bow around all of this, looking at where everything goes from here. And let's stick with you, Joe, touching on the fact that yesterday the NBA issued a memo to all 30 teams to address, quote, the dire risks that gambling can pose, at the same time that Congress has requested a response from Adam Silver. How, if at all, do you see the NBA, or any other leagues for that matter, pivoting their official position or relationships with sports betting as a result of this scandal?
I mean, publicly, they're going to say, like, well, this was forced on us or something akin to that. This is the way the law went. And so we're trying to do our best to work within that. We have concerns. They've said it in the past. We have concerns. Maybe we should, the sports books ought to consider the type of bets, content that they're offering, everything like that. But then remember that all these league heads were the ones that right after pass was overturned, they're all talking about how this is going to be great. You're going to be able to bet on every pitched ball, every pass, every down, every shot, all this stuff. It's just going to lead to greater fan engagement. Okay. Meanwhile, they're all, we're paying through the nose and other orifices for their official data feeds. Okay, upon which these proposition wagers are based and settled. So if all of a sudden that product is devalued by, like, okay, well, we've got to get rid of all the proposition wagers. Well, we don't need your data feed. Okay, if we're just going to be offering main markets, pregame and halves and quarters and things like that, we don't need your data feed. We can do that on our own. So I have a feeling that they're going to try and have it both ways. Okay, and as far as Congress is concerned, here's the thing. Congress, I think it's appropriate for Congress to stick their nose in here. It'd be great to see Congress actually do something for once, right? But Congress is going to make the most, it's going to be like every other congressional hearing that we've had so far regarding this industry, at least in the 20 years that I've been involved with it. It's going to be a lot of people making statements. They're going to invite witnesses that have precious little to do with the industry. At least two of them, there'll be 5 witnesses. At least 2 of them are going to be problem gambling people. And we're going to get to hear them. Okay? And they're blame us for everything. They'll have maybe one representative that'll be a government relations person representing the fan kings of the world. And then God knows, and probably a couple of people, even Adam and I have never heard of. They don't really talk to people who really have a view on this industry. They don't talk to people who have really been in the trenches in this industry. They don't talk to people who really know how this thing works. I think it would be great to see Adam in front of this committee, don't you? Since he's now a resident of Michigan, not to give Senator Cruz any ideas or anything like that, but we're going to get the same old, and there's going to be an awful lot of deflection and a lot about we're concerned and we ought to do more of this. and we got to do more of that. And then when it's over, when all is said and done, nothing will happen. Why? Because nothing has happened coming out of any of these congressional hearings for the last 20 years.
Well, Adam, we may not be able to get you in front of that committee anytime soon, but we do have you in front of the camera here today. So let's come to you one more time on this topic. One of the many responses to the scandal has included calls to ban props, including by Ohio Governor DeWine just yesterday, as Joe referenced earlier, calling for a ban of, quote, micro prop bets. Even if there were political will to follow through with this, how practical is any proposal in your book to ban an entire category of betting market?
Ban them all. I'm all for it. Ban them all. I don't want to book this shit. This is hard work. Well, you got to, instead of following 30 teams, you got to follow 300 players. Like, come on now. I'd happily shut them down. It's not going to do anything. One, they're not going to do anything about it. Just the wine has been going on for this for 12 months or more. 100% agreed on the college player props because no one really did them anyway, so it didn't really matter. Occasionally in the bowls or whatnot things. I mean, what are they going to do? Again, 60% of the industry isn't policed anyway, and they're going to continue to do it because they're all using the same data providers that the regulated people use. Nothing changes. This will still exist. It just won't be policed and monitored like it is now. It's quiet insanity of what they want to or think that people want to hear, especially a governor and those kind of things. They're taking the side of the people and the outrage of the people. We're still like pointing the finger at sports betting. And Ohio's up there trying to get casino passed through and have these massive license fees for casinos. Wait till that hits their front doorstep and their bankruptcies go up and their problem gambling goes up and all these kind of things. Like what we're seeing the last week is shit works. You have the data. You have the integrity teams. You have everything that you need to have. What happens if you take it out of the regulated market? You don't have that. So now there is more reason to do these things because there's no way to police it and see it. These players that are 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th on an NBA roster that don't make, they could make the money in a couple of weekends betting that they do for a whole season training and everything else. Like we're in a perfect spot now where you're growing the regulated market, you're growing the oversight, you're growing the data, you're growing all the eyeballs on this stuff. Yes. Now, every time someone goes down the court and misses 2 easy layups in a row, they're on the take and let's go look at their props. Well, we can do that because the data's there and you can go double check. Someone rolls over an ankle and comes off after 8 minutes and suddenly all their props have gone under. Well, again, we have 30, 40 brands. You can go out there and see the bets on that player. These are things that you can quickly look at. And if they're vocal about it, you can quickly, put things to it to sort of squash rumors and stuff like that. They're in a good spot and they don't know this because they don't know the industry. They're just looking at the money coming in and what tax dollars they can get out of this. And then they think that they're preaching to the choir that everyone's saying, well, sports betting's ruining American society. Sports betting existed long before 2018. As Joe said on the Super Bowl props, they've been around for 20 years. It's just that now they do Super Bowl props every single week. Well, this stuff's going to continue whether they want it to or not. Just because Ohio decides they might shut it down, then suddenly people are going across to Pennsylvania or West Virginia or Indiana, or people are going to do it if they want to do it. A lot of this seems like it's a bit of a grab for we need federal oversight. So let's come in and take it from the states and make it some simple blanket umbrella sort of theory, how they can police this. Maybe that's their angle here. Maybe it's the feds looking at the states and saying, piss poor job. Let's take that revenue or that money over here and let's do it on a federal. I don't know. I don't know what the game is that they're playing, but generally, as Joe said, they're not having conversations with those really in the trenches, those that have been doing this for 3 decades, that understand this is going to happen. No matter what you do going forward, ban them, not ban them, whatever not, it's going to continue to happen with lower level, lesser earning players. I would think that a coach makes good money in the NBA, but, people can be greedy. People can be, not all money is good money, as many will say, but that's just the way it is. It's human nature. So I would say stick with what it is, regulate it, oversee it. That's the whole purpose that Joe spent most of his adult life trying to get this into the US and tax it. And don't let it be a waste of Joe's time. You're on track. Keep moving it forward.
Hey, just real quick before we jump, let's play out this hypothetical that people want to talk about out there, the solution. Let's get rid of props. Let's say there was a way that we could wave a magic wand and we could get rid of all prop wagers, not only in the regulated market, but in the unregulated market as well, right? So the only thing that we're left with, main markets, the results of games, right? Now, these guys didn't get into this because they said hey, I got this really great money-making idea. Why don't we corrupt a bunch of player props and we can make some money on this side? These guys got into it because they got into poker games and they got themselves in financial trouble. Or they got themselves into financial trouble the old-fashioned way, overspending, things like that. The problem here being the genesis was you had players that had money problems. And so they were looking for a way, hey, how can I make some money? And they went to player props because it was the thing that they had the most immediate control over. Now, imagine a universe where there are no player props. So now the only way that if these guys said you know what, wonder if if the mob guys came to him and said we need you to do this for us. We need you to do that for us so you could clear out that million that you owe us from your shitty poker play. Now it becomes, okay, we need you to throw a game. We need you to shave points. The stuff that is going to really, you think the public is upset that Jonte Porter didn't get his usual number of minutes and the number of points or something like that? Most of the public didn't know who the hell Jonte Porter was until he became a cheat and got caught. But do you think that the public will lose faith in sports if players start shaving points or throwing games in order to be, once they get financially compromised by people? Hell yeah. It'll absolutely be worse. So I'm not suggesting that props are is a buffer kind of thing between, the reason why we got to have them is they act as a buffer between, small markets and markets that would really shake the public's confidence. But I've not heard any solution right now from all of these people in the media, in the public and everything, oh, I've got a great idea. The simple solution is this. How do you change the attitude of would-be cheaters, of corrupt players? You keep telling the sports books and others what they should do. You haven't said anything about how do you change the attitude, the mind of a corrupt person, a corrupt player, because that's all that's going to be left.
And with that, we'll make a quick pivot back to our regular programming to take us home this week. Adam, college football week 10 and NFL week 9 openers are up. Go ahead and give us a quick sneak peek at any noteworthy early action across the football landscape, as well as anything beyond football, considering the jam-packed sporting calendar across the week to come.
So having a quick look at college football, it's Miami, Florida, SMU is the big bet game so far. It opened up at 8.5. It's been pretty well bet up to 11, some coming back the other way. On the NFL, there was 3 games I noticed. I just added a special one at the end for you, Matt. But the first 2 are Ravens, Dolphins. Significant money on the Ravens, open 5.5, going to 7.5 pretty quick, and there's been some buyback on the Dolphins. The next one was Detroit Lions, same 7.5, bet up to 10, and then the Vikings had some money come back at 10. Both of those games, 75% of the money on the favorites. And then the little old LA Chargers, literally 99% of the money on the Chargers so far.
Jinx.
Opened up at 8.5, solid at 10.5 right now. And the only master action on that is at -9. So that's what we're looking at early in the week. For that, if I look at the next baseball game, let me have a quick look, see where that's at. Early money, game 3. Early money is on the Jays, looking at about 60% of that. And considering they're a 63% dog, heavy money on the Blue Jays for game 3.
To the audience, thanks as always for tuning in. Have a safe and happy Halloween on Friday. Here's some more treats than tricks in your betting portfolio, and we'll catch you next week. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Prime Suspects. Register for Prime Sports at primesports.com and download the Prime Sports app. You can follow us on Twitter at PrimeSuspects_, at Joe Brennan Jr., and at Adam Bjorn 2. You must be 21 or over to play on Prime Sports. Always bet responsibly and within your limits. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER.